Hello one and all, and once again, welcome to yet another episode of the 8-Bit Academic, where I bring you a bit of gaming history and yet more random information about another random topic that I've stumbled across while on my never-ending quest for knowledge. I'm beginning to think that maybe I have a problem, because seriously, who watches this stuff anyway? Excuse my little moments of self-doubt there. Sometimes an artist can be their own worst critic. But anyway, dear viewers who share in my strange tastes, let us continue. Today's video game showcase is definitely a product of its time, since I don't see something like this ever existing outside the decade that was the 90s, and believe me when I say, this is probably one of the most 90s games ever made. Imagine for a moment a 2D fighting game which features claymation 3D sprites of dinosaurs and other monsters like giant apes engaging in battles to the death over who gets to be the savage ruler of a post-apocalyptic world with a legion of faithful human servants that worship them as gods. Well, if your mind is as visually creative as mine, and trust me when I say mine definitely is.
Don't do it! No, that's not good! This is wrong! No! No! No, don't do it! No! 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 No, don't do it!
Stop right there, criminal scum! Nobody breaks the law on my watch!
Then you would definitely have imagined something similar to, or at least close to, today's feature called Primal Rage, which honestly seems like it was the brainchild of a bunch of super geeks that did a shit ton of cocaine and other drugs. All jokes aside though, when I first came across Primal Rage as a kid in my local arcade, it blew my mind. It was everything an 8-year-old boy could wish for, especially one who had a probably unhealthy obsession with dinosaurs at the time. Which, it seems like I have had a bunch of unhealthy obsessions throughout my life. I think I might need some help.
I'm Michael Jordan. Stop it. Get some help.
Primal Rage was developed by Atari Games and released in 1994 for arcades. As I vaguely mentioned earlier, the game takes place on a post-apocalyptic version of Earth called Earth, which is spelled as URTH, wherein players control one of 7 prehistoric beasts that battle each other to determine the planet's fate, with matches featuring many of the typical conventions of fighting games from that era, including special moves and gory finishing maneuvers akin to those found in games like Bloodstorm, Killer Instinct, and Mortal Kombat. Primal Rage was a traditional 2-dimensional fighting game in which 2 players select characters to battle each other in one-on-one combat, or a single player is faced with a campaign of fights against CPU opponents of increasing difficulty. A total of 7 characters are playable, with each of them having their own specialized set of 3 attack moves and abilities. The object is to deplete the opposing character's health meter before the player's own runs out. There are also 7 different background stages where fighting takes place, each one representing one of the character's innate domains. Despite all my earlier attempts at lame comedy emphasizing the game's 90s aesthetic and influences, Primal Rage is pretty awesome and definitely scratches that nostalgia itch quite nicely. Sadly though, I do feel it was one of those games that was better experienced in the actual gaming arcades of the time, or on home consoles playing against your friends. The footage I have here is from a PlayStation 1 emulator, and while I do have fond memories of playing it as a kid in local arcades, the charm and nostalgia of it wears off very quickly, as there isn't much else to do other than pick a prehistoric beast and fight other prehistoric beasts until you've beaten them all and repeat the cycle all over again. There was meant to be a sequel to Primal Rage, which was planned for release in 1996, and which actually got pretty far in development and even had been ported to at least one arcade cabinet before being cancelled due to fears that it would not generate enough sales in a market that had begun shifting more towards 3D fighting games like Tekken 2 and the Virtua Fighter series. A test arcade cabinet briefly appeared playable at the Golfland Arcades in Sunnyvale, California, and a supposedly finished machine of this was shown at the California Extreme 2001 convention show. For those of you who don't know what a convention is, well, it's basically a great big gathering for nerds where we engage in various religious rituals like dressing up as your favorite fictional characters, a ceremonial practice known as cosplay.
Steven, what are you doing in there?
Drugs.
The machine presented at the convention in 2001 had the original arcade board and most of the original concept art. In the following decade, screenshots of the incomplete game were released on the internet and circulated on online forums. In December 2012, a YouTuber posted a video of the game, and then in June 2014, it was reported that the game was available for play at Galloping Ghost Arcade in Brookfield, Illinois, in the United States. With only 2 boards of the game considered to be in existence, a dump from the game's board had been circulating online for years, but no emulator had been able to run it, until in March 2017, it was revealed that an individual had created a modified version of MAME named MAME for Rage 2, making it possible to emulate the game. MAME being an emulator that allows you to play many classic arcade games from the 90s and also from the 80s. Thank you to that individual who was able to make the game playable on modern PCs via the use of an arcade emulator like MAME. I couldn't find your name anywhere, but if you ever see this video, you are truly a hero. So in relation to today's video game showcase that features dinosaurs, I have decided to talk about a rather bizarre conspiracy theory that has circulated the internet for some time. One in which there have been quite a number of claims making the rounds, not only online but also in mainstream news over the years about the existence of dinosaurs in modern day Africa. The most famous of these claims being an alleged Sauropod dinosaur, which the locals apparently call Mokele Mbembe. For those who don't know what a sauropod is, basically all them super gigantic dinos with the extremely long neck. But before we get started, let's go a little bit back in time to when these claims began to circulate and what essentially started the mostly pseudoscientific study of cryptozoology. Cryptozoology, as mentioned earlier, is a type of pseudoscience, or rather fake science, that centers around the study and attempts at discovery of unknown, mythical or long extinct animals. Things like Bigfoot, the Yeti, Loch Ness Monster, dragons, chupacabra, and even on our own continent of Africa, the aforementioned dinosaur Mokele Mbembe, or the so-called grootslang, which translated from Afrikaans just means big snake, which is an alleged giant snake that apparently inhabits a cave located in Richtersveld in the Northern Cape province of South Africa. Definitely a topic for a future video. People involved in cryptozoology, or rather known as cryptozoologists, refer to these creatures or animals as cryptids, and is often considered as a pseudoscience because it never actually uses the scientific method, but rather relies on hearsay and vague evidence. The term itself was coined in the 1950s by zoologists Bernard Heuvelmans and Ivan T. Sanderson, who were both legitimate scientists in their day, but who both ended up taking a keen interest in unknown animals and the possibility of dinosaurs having survived into the modern era. I mean, technically some of them kinda did if you look at many species of modern birds, since birds fall into the same category as two-legged dinosaurs called theropods, but hey, I already discussed that in another video about the Velociraptor, link in the description below and at the end of the video. In reality though, if one has to get all technical about it, cryptozoology has most likely existed throughout human history. One simply has to look at the various myths and legends of great beasts and monsters that have existed in different cultures around the world. Things like dragons, sea serpents, the kraken, unicorns, etc. could all be thought of as early examples of cryptids. So it goes without saying that we as the human race have always had some pretty wild imaginations, or maybe we tripped too hard on too many drugs throughout our past. Who knows?
Marshall Mathers. Some of you may know him as Eminem, but he's going to join the Saturday night crew with our music intro starting next Saturday night. But folks, I want to take you to the world premiere of one of his new videos called Berserk. Take a listen.
That brings us to the belief in the idea that prehistoric dinosaurs exist on the continent of Africa, with the most famous example of this, as mentioned before, being Mokele Mbembe, which is alleged to roam the jungles of the Congo, according to a handful of crazy white guys from Western countries and a few local Congolese tribesmen that are most likely just going along with the bullshit because it nets them a monetary reward. But enough with the tongue-in-cheek mockery. The story of Mokele Mbembe is actually a very interesting one, with alleged first reports of footprints and tracks being left by a large unknown creature dating all the way back to 1776, and written by a French explorer named Abbe Liv.
Listen properly.
I'm probably going to mess up his name because I cannot speak French, but Abbe Livain Bonaventure Proyat, who penned a rather captivating narrative regarding the strange footprints in his book, History of Lowango, Kakonga, and other kingdoms in Africa. According to him, the footprints marked by enormous claw marks measured about 3 feet or 0.9 meters in circumference, leading him and other observers present to conclude that the creature responsible did not sprint, but rather ambled with its claws spaced an extraordinary distance apart, and also having them question what kind of a beast could leave such massive tracks behind if it wasn't an elephant. Around the early 20th century, in the year 1913, the then colonial German government wished to conduct a survey of all its colonies in Africa, and specifically in Cameroon. The man who led the expedition was Captain Freiherr von Stein zu Lauschnitz. After interviewing a handful of locals who swore on their grandma's grave that this should be real fam, von Stein would go on to write a report that described the mysterious creature as follows. The animal is said to be of a brownish-grey color with a smooth skin. Its size is approximately that of an elephant, at least that of a hippopotamus. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck, and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it's a horn. A few spoke about a long muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack vessels at once and kill the crews, but without eating the bodies. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river in the clay of its shores at sharp bends. It is said to climb the shores, even at daytime, in search of food. Its diet is said to be entirely vegetable. This feature disagrees with a possible explanation as a myth. The preferred plant was shown to me. It is a kind of liana with large white blossoms, with a milky sap and apple-like fruits. At the Sisombo River, I was shown a path said to have been made by this animal in order to get at its food. The path was fresh and there were plants of the described type nearby, but since there were too many tracks of elephants, hippos and other large mammals, it was impossible to make out a particular spoor with any amount of certainty. However, in a 1929 German book by science author Wilhelm Bolsch called Dragons, Legend and Science, Bolsch wrote that Captain Freiherr von Stein clearly believed that the creature described by the natives was not an actual animal, but was instead nothing more than local folklore. These reports of creatures described to be dinosaur-like in Africa did end up causing a minor sensation in the mass media in many Western countries, most commonly in newspapers across Europe and North America, which printed many articles on the subject in the early 20th century. Some people did indeed take the reports at face value, while many others were more skeptical. This massive interest in Mokele Mbembe and the possibility of modern-day dinosaurs living in Africa could also be attributed to the fact that at the time, Western Europe and the Americas were going through a huge pop cultural interest in dinosaurs, of which the Brontosaurus was one of the most popular. This cultural trend could have contributed to both the reports as well as the tendency for newspapers to claim that the reported beast was a sauropod or a long-necked dinosaur. Several expeditions of varying scientific credibility were undertaken in the 20th century to search for Mokele Mbembe, or at least to interview alleged eyewitnesses. In 1980 and again in 1981, explorer Henry Powell and biologist Roy Mackal visited the Congo region and interviewed native residents. They did not find any physical evidence, but nonetheless argued that consistent statements made from claimed eyewitnesses tended to support the creature's existence. Mackal published a book in 1987 detailing his expeditions, where he did admit that his investigation was tinged with some romanticism, but also insisted that his intentions were indeed scientific in nature. The Henry Powell and Roy Mackal expedition almost single-handedly popularized the modern concept of Mokele Mbembe to Westerners, yet was extremely flawed. Mackal's scientific background was actually in virology, and he had no experience in the field of zoology itself, which is the study of animals. This simple fact arguably did not qualify him to search for large, exotic creatures, but he also seemed to blindly accept eyewitness statements without considering the possibility that people might lie or exaggerate for financial gain, for attention, or to impress an American visitor, often stating things along the lines of, "Why would indigenous or tribal people lie, especially since they have no access to the outside world or modern technology and have never seen or heard of a dinosaur before?" Almost as if to say that the indigenous people of Africa are too ignorant and primitive to have any knowledge of the outside world at all, which is not only pretty messed up and extremely ridiculous on his part to generalize an entire group of people that way, but it is also hilariously ironic, since one can clearly see in some of the recorded footage found in documentaries on the subject of other cryptozoologists interviewing these people that they indeed do have access to the outside world, with many of them wearing Western clothing and even using cell phones. To add to this, both Roy Mackal and Henry Powell were aggressively dismissive of Africans who denied knowledge of Mokele Mbembe, or who asserted that the creature did not exist, and that the name for it could possibly just be a mistranslation. I guess when you believe in your own bullshit long enough, it ends up becoming your reality.
Hello! Greetings, dear humans, Earth humans. Greetings to you, our unconditional love to you all, Earth humans. We love you so very, 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 very much.
Another zoologist named Mokele Mbembe claimed that he took a film of Mokele Mbembe in 1983, but the footage did not develop properly. How inconvenient. It is also worth noting as well that critical details of Mbembe's account of having witnessed the African dinosaur have changed over time, and that none of it was supported by other witnesses. A Scottish explorer named William Gibbons led 2 expeditions in 1985 and 1992, though many experts like paleontologist aka dinosaur bone analyst Donald Prothero questioned his motives as a creationist and described Gibbons as not following even basic scientific principles. For those who don't know, creationists are essentially people who believe that the universe as we know it and all life on Earth was created by God, except that many of these, mostly from Western countries, try to take it a step further by attempting to back it up with scientific study. Nothing wrong with that at all in my opinion, just that sometimes it leads down these strange rabbit holes that include proving that the Earth is flat and proving that dinosaurs existed alongside humans, and that there are dinosaurs still existing today. And no, I don't mean the theropods, which include modern day birds, like I mentioned earlier, before someone calls me a hypocrite. I mean dinosaurs like sauropods, like Brachiosaurus or Diplodocus. Though many prehistoric theropods like T-Rex definitely do not exist anymore. Back to my original thought though, regarding creationism and its connection to proving that dinosaurs still exist. What any of this has to do with spiritual enlightenment, religious practice, and belief in a higher power like God is beyond me. In 2001, the BBC broadcasted the TV series Congo, which featured a collective interview with a group of Biaka pygmies, one of the many indigenous ethnic groups that live in the Congo. They identified the Mokele Mbembe as a rhinoceros while looking at an illustrated manual of wildlife. Neither species of African rhinoceros is currently common in the Congo basin, and the Mokele Mbembe may be a mixture of mythology and folk memory from a time in the past when rhinoceroses were found in the area in larger numbers. In 2016, a travel film crew from South Africa made a documentary about searching for Mokele Mbembe, which they later sold to Discovery Africa. The team spent roughly 4 weeks in the Likuala swamp region, visiting various villages, collecting stories of the creature's existence. They pointed out the difficulty of differentiating between a Mokele Mbembe's metaphysical and physical existence. While they interviewed people who believed in its presence, others stated it died at least a decade ago. In 2018, Lens Grieve of Nuthenborg, Adam Christopher Knuth, and a film crew from Danish radio and a DNA scientist traveled to Lake Tele in Congo in search of the Mokele Mbembe. They did not find the cryptid, however they did find a new species of green algae, which is, something, I guess? The lack of physical evidence and the conflicting accounts by witnesses have made the existence of the entity doubted by the large majority of scientists and historians. The most reasonable and agreed upon explanation is that the Mokele Mbembe is a legend based on the black rhinoceros, a species which was once common to Central Africa, where the stories of the Mokele Mbembe originated, but which is far less prevalent now due to being critically endangered thanks to poaching, because those foreign billionaires still believe powdered rhino horns can make their dicks hard.
Do you guys want to see what I can do? Why do I have two beds? One for me and one for my hooker. One for me and one for my hooker. One for me and one for my hooker. One for me and one for the hooker. One for me and one for my hooker.
Welcome to the sub club.
One for the hooker. One for me and 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 one for the hooker. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Welcome to the sub club.
Take it, bitch. Take it. I finished already. I'm sorry, guys. I tried really hard, but I finished.
According to skeptic Ben Radford, the origin of the creature can be traced back to a 1909 book by zoologist Carl Hagenbeck called Beasts and Men, based on dinosaur bones that were discovered around that time. Hagenbeck speculated that sauropods may still live in Africa, although he offered no evidence other than legends and hearsay. Most skeptics and experts conclude that the past reports of the dinosaur monster creature thing were not the result of hard evidence or genuine first-hand accounts of native encounters with the beast, but rather a distillation of many creatively varied stories from widely separated regions and sources that have simply been repeated over time in an extremely long, decade-spanning game of broken telephone. The absence of evidence supporting the creature's existence despite several centuries of Western contact with the region, numerous expeditions in search of the animal, and periodic aerial and satellite surveillance, all of which have detected elephants and other large animals but no sauropod dinosaurs, all serve to argue against the existence of Mokele Mbembe. To conclude this really long video though, with a few short bonus facts, Mokele Mbembe isn't the only dinosaur-like cryptid that is claimed to exist in Central Africa. There are also at least two others that have reached the level of fame and intrigue that Mokele Mbembe has, which are called Emele Ntuka and the Kongomato. Emele Ntuka is described as looking similar to a rhinoceros, but being larger in size and with a singular large horn on its nose, as well as a long crocodile-like tail, which some cryptozoologists believing that it may be a ceratopsian dinosaur, such as the now extinct Triceratops or Styracosaurus. Emele Ntuka was first mentioned by Lucien Blanco in an article for the scientific journal Mammalia in 1954. The Kongomato, on the other hand, is described as a flying reptile similar to that of the long-extinct pterosaurs like Pterodactyl or Quetzalcoatlus, and has been claimed to have been witnessed by various people living in Zambia, the Congo, and Angola. Its name supposedly means breaker of boats or overturner of boats, as the Kongomato are said to have capsized the canoes of natives and even European explorers, as well as attacking people who ventured too close to the nearby rivers which it roamed. It is described as a reddish lizard with membranous wings and teeth in its beak. Its wingspan ranges from 4 to 100 feet across. When shown a picture of a pterosaur, the indigenous tribes of these regions said that it was a picture of a Kongomato. There are many other examples of claims of dinosaur-like animals that have been cited in various parts around the world, which include the famous Loch Ness Monster from Scotland and another flying pterosaur-like creature called the Ropin from Papua New Guinea. But now the question is left to you, my dear viewers. Do you think that dinosaurs or other strange mythical creatures like dragons do really exist in the modern world? Or perhaps some of you may have actually had an encounter with something like Mokele Mbembe or the Kongomato. Personally, due to a lack of actual physical evidence, I find it hard to believe in such claims, but boy, do they make for some pretty interesting and exciting stories and discussions. While I do remain a skeptic when it comes to most conspiracy-related topics, or even topics surrounding cryptids, I cannot deny that I'm quite a sucker for these types of things because I find them quite fun. Anyway, that's it from me for today. I hope you all found the video interesting and insightful. If you enjoy my content, please do consider subscribing and hitting that bell button for weekly updates. I upload new videos every Friday as well as YouTube shorts, which are basically just cut up clips of the longer videos on a daily basis, ranging from a wide variety of topics which include history, science, politics, conspiracy theories, media and entertainment, and basically just things that my overly inquisitive mind finds interesting, which I then couple with a wee bit of video game history, with the retro games I play and provide as footage. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.
You go suck a dick and a banana, 'cause that is all you are.